If the Blue Jackets don't keep Dante Fabbro around, could Aaron Ekblad be a decent replacement to play with Zach Werenski? We discuss on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, and to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com to learn more. It's another free agency episode. The free agent list is not getting any shorter. All of these guys still, as far as I'm aware, remain unsigned. So it's going to get interesting as we get closer and closer to, I believe, July 1st is free agency. But now I feel like I'm second guessing myself. Am I being insane? I feel like I can't find a list of when free agency is going to start. Yeah, July 1st. I thought I was going insane. I'm not. Well, maybe I am, but it's about a month away. Obviously, we've got the draft to get through before that, but lots of potential free agents still available, right? And one that I want to talk about today is a guy that I keep talking myself in and out of, like him being a good fit on the Blue Jackets. And I think the way that I have kind of decided to approach this is I'm looking at Aaron Ekblad specifically as a replacement for Dante Fabbro in the way that I kind of looked at Vladislav Gavrikov specifically as a replacement for Ivan Provorov. If the Blue Jackets can't sign Dante Fabbro, which I hope that they manage to, but if they can't, Aaron Ekblad is a potential guy that I could see fitting in with Zach Werenski. I have a couple of reservations, but not a ton, if I'm being honest. So I figure we'll talk about Aaron Ekblad, his time in Florida. We'll talk about whether the Blue Jackets really do need another offensively minded defenseman, although Ekblad is way more of a two-way guy than, say, Zach Werenski. And also, what's that contract going to look like? Is it going to be many, many, many millions of dollars for many, many years, right? Because I don't know that you want to sign another Severson contract. I don't think Ekblad will turn into Severson necessarily. Severson. There we go. But he is about the same age that Severson was when he signed the contract. But we'll see. Is the short answer to that. Ekblad is better than Severson. I don't think that's unfair to say, but we'll get into it. I want to talk about kind of Ekblad in a vacuum first, like as a player. I have always liked Aaron Ekblad's play, and I feel like he gets a lot of stick for not living up to being a first overall pick, right? I think a lot of people think that if you are drafted first overall, then you have to be 100% the best player on your team, best player ever, like elite superstar, A+++ player. Aaron Ekblad is a very good player. I don't think that he is the best player on the Panthers. Oh, no, I know he's not the best player on the Panthers. But I do wonder, and this is kind of why I have been preaching patience with guys like Matejchuk. I preached a little bit of patience with guys like Jiricek, but I don't think I preached enough patience there. Defensemen take longer to develop than forwards do, right? That's why Rasmus Dahlin, for example, took a few years to grow into being that number one defenseman for Buffalo. Aaron Ekblad was drafted in 2014 and jumped immediately into the NHL as an 18-year-old, which seems like a wild choice to make. Personally speaking, was he too good for the OHL? Probably. He couldn't play in the AHL, sorry, because of the CHL NHL agreement. But I think Aaron Ekblad has been I think his development was mishandled, and I think he never really hit the stride that he could have done. Because I do genuinely think that Aaron Ekblad could have been potentially the best player on the Panthers. Obviously, this is no shade to guys like Sasha Barkov, no shade to guys like Matthew Tkachuk. Aaron Ekblad had all the potential in the world, and I think it was mishandled by Florida. That's not to say that Aaron Ekblad has not turned into a very, very good defenseman, right? Like, he's got 380 points in 732 career games. So he's about a half a point a game player. Had 33 points in 56 games this season. Really did well in the playoffs. 11 points in 13 games. Like, is kind of the opposite of Gavrikov, actually. And we've talked about them kind of as a comparison a little bit. Vladislav Gavrikov will not create offense, but he also won't let the other team create offense, right? He kind of basically falls directly in the middle of. So he's a net zero in terms of creation of offense for the team. What that means is he doesn't not create offense, but he also doesn't create any offense, right? It's very much there will be no offense when I am on the ice for either team. Ekblad is like that with defense, except he is a net zero at defense. So he doesn't add anything defensively, but he also doesn't take anything away defensively, right? For these, I'm using hockeyviz.com as I've been using for most of these free agent profiles. Ekblad grades out pretty well offensively and about average defensively, which is I'm fine with. Is a top 4 caliber player. I don't know that he is a true first pair guy, but I don't think he would be out of place on that top pair with Zach Werenski at all. But he is a very good, very competent player, right? I think the recency bias of did he have a knee injury this season that stopped him playing, I believe, and he also got suspended for for performance enhancing drugs, which I'm not sure. I always question these kind of suspensions because I think a lot about how Nicklas Backstrom couldn't play in the 2014 Olympics. He couldn't play the gold medal game for Sweden because his inhaler had pseudoephedrine in, which is not allowed under IIHF regulations. So on the one hand, yes, you should know what's going into your body. On the other hand, I'm Aaron Ekblad is clearly not sitting here pounding steroids, right? He's not injecting baby blood into his lungs. I don't know. I got off track there, but I do think that might be something that teams will have to consider. I do wonder if that will drive his price down a little bit or his cost down necessarily. But when you look at what is a relatively weak free agency class, really it's only the two names for me. If you look at non-Blue Jackets, right? Because for me, the top 4 UFAs are Provorov, Fabro, Ekblad, Gavrikov, right? So if you take Provorov and Fabro out of it, assume that they're both gone, you're left with the two guys. You're left with Ekblad, you're left with Gavrikov, and it really depends on what you want to add. I still think that I lean towards adding a defensive guy. I think the Blue Jackets have enough offensive defensemen in, Werenski, and I also think in Matejchuk as well. I think we're going to see in a couple of years. I think we're going to see him really start to take off offensively. And again, obviously, signing Ekblad does not mean that one of Provorov and Fabro won't return, but they're both offensively minded guys, right? I think Fabro, again, has really fit in well with Werenski, and I think Fabro and Ekblad feel like very similar players in terms of they're not a disaster defensively. They can contribute to the offense. They are a really good complementary player. And I think putting Ekblad and Werenski together could be a lot of fun. I don't know that I prefer Ekblad to Fabro necessarily, but that might just be because I've seen a lot more of Dante Fabbro play this season than I have Aaron Ekblad, right? But I still, I like Aaron Ekblad's game a lot. Does he fit into what the Blue Jackets are trying to build here? He's 29 years old. He's going to be expensive. Let's talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and also live. They've got player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, so fans have way more ways to play than ever to win big. And here's the best bit. If you are new to FanDuel, if you're a new FanDuel customer, go in, sign up, bet $5 on whatever you want. Pick the heaviest favorite you can, in my opinion. And if that first $5 bet hits, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets that you can spend on whatever you want. So if you feel real confident about whether Florida's going to win the cup or whether Edmonton's going to win the cup, put $5 on it. If it wins, $200 is yours to spend on whatever you want. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA, and also us, the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We are talking all about Aaron Ekblad today. Whether he could be a replacement for Dante Fabbro, whether he fits into the Blue Jackets, how much is he going to cost, all of that stuff. So let's, we've talked a little bit about Aaron Ekblad as a player and what you're going to get, which is a perfectly acceptable, offensively minded defenseman that is not going to be a disaster defensively, right? Because with the best will in the world, Zach Werenski is not like... Zach Werenski was better defensively than he's been in a couple of seasons, right? But I don't know that you're going to look to him to play defense necessarily. He is on average 4% worse than the average NHL defenseman at defense, but he's also plus 16% in terms of offense. So he's not giving up more than he's creating is where I'm going from here. But a guy like Ekblad, who adds a little bit offensively but doesn't give anything away defensively, I think is a really good option. And like I said, it's very similar to the kind of role that Dante Fabbro played this season. I'm just pulling up Fabro's numbers. Fabro was weaker offensively, a little better defensively. Again, really it came out in the wash with Fabro. He was a real kind of net zero player, which is not the worst. And honestly, that's kind of what I look for in a Werenski partner. Is you don't need him to be particularly offensive. All you need him to do is not be a disaster on defense. And that was what Fabro was, is that he was slightly better than average on defense and also slightly better than average on offense. Ekblad is kind of the same, but more offensive, a little bit less defensive. But honestly, the profiles grade out pretty similar, which, again, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about Ekblad's mismanagement, because I feel like a guy that you picked up on waivers, whether he should have been on waivers or not, and I feel like Barry Trotz regrets that waivers assignment a little bit this after this season. But a guy that has been put on waivers and picked up probably shouldn't be grading out to be roughly the same as a guy like Aaron Ekblad, former first overall pick. Now, Aaron Ekblad has been very good for a very long time. Dante Fabbro has kind of been an up and down player. Hockeyviz.com has him as a pretty solid second pair guy. Dipped a little bit in his first few seasons, has kind of picked it back up. This season was his best season by far. But what do the Blue Jackets do, right? If he doesn't return, is Aaron Ekblad a suitable replacement? He's going to cost a lot more than Dante Fabbro, probably, which we'll talk about in a second here. But I do think he's going to fill in the same role as Dante Fabbro would, which brings me to kind of my point there, which is, what if instead of paying more for Ekblad, you just pay Fabro less for basically the same result, right? I think, and by which I mean, if you're going to get, okay, here's the thing. If Dante Fabbro costs $2.5 million a year, which I think he'll probably cost more than that, and Aaron Ekblad costs $5 million a year, is Aaron Ekblad twice as good as Fabro? I don't think so. Like, maybe. Are you going to get twice as much production from him? Possibly, but I don't think it's likely. And that's kind of where I'm coming at this, in the same way that I talked about this a little bit when I talked about Mana versus Ehlers, right? If you pay Mana $12 million and you pay Ehlers $9 million, are you going to get 100 points from, like, would you rather have 100 points from Mana or 75 points from Ehlers at that price point, right? Do you want, I don't know how many points Fabro had this season off the top of my head, but Ekblad had 33 and made significantly more than Dante Fabbro, who made, I believe, about 2.5. Fabro had 26 points in 68 games, so about a third of a point a game. Ekblad, just over half a point a game. So again, that's not, to me anyway, that doesn't feel like enough of a jump in productivity to justify the price increase. And I mean, let's talk about the price increase, honestly, because Aaron Ekblad currently makes, I believe, about $7 million a season. Again, I had the Putpedia page for the Florida Panthers up and then lost it. Aaron Ekblad is making, or was making, $7.5 million a year for the last 8 years, which I believe was the one that came right out of his entry-level contract. So, like, good job to him. And I think he was worth that money. You've got to think he's probably looking for about that. And also, is he looking long-term, right? Is he looking for, like, 7x7 as a contract? And is that going to be palatable to the Blue Jackets, who, again, they need more than one player, but they also want to save some money, right? They're not going to spend all $41 million in free agency this year. They have to spend some of it to get to the cap floor, right? I believe they're about 14 or 15 million away from the cap floor right now. So they're going to have to get at least a couple of guys, right? Even if they sign Mitch Marner to 14 million, that's still not going to get them over the cap floor, I don't think. Do you want to pay Aaron Ekblad $7 million for the next 7 years? He'll be 36 when that contract finishes, which is, again, kind of, I think, a point in Dante Fabbro's side. Couldn't think of the word there. A point in his favor. There you go. He's only 26. Aaron Ekblad is 29. But Aaron Ekblad has a much bigger body of work to look at. And again, Aaron Ekblad has been very good for a long time. Dante Fabbro has been fine for a few years and then had a pretty good year this year with Columbus. So do they bank on Fabro and Werenski continuing to stick? Which also, people, this is a bit of a non sequitur, but I saw someone the other day talking about Fabro versus Provorov, right? And who does the organization, if the organization can only pick one, who do they pick? And someone was like, well, probably they'll pick the guy that Werenski likes playing with because of how big a deal Werenski is to this organization, right? I see a lot of people saying that Werenski's probably going to be the next captain when Boone Jenner is done. I am unsure of that myself. Not that I don't think he's the right guy, but I am unsure that. I mean, again, it depends on how long Boone Jenner sticks around for, and I think there's a lot of people in the organization that think Adam Fantilli's the next captain of this team. But they make a good point that if they want to keep Werenski happy, look at what's happening in Vancouver, right? They basically were like, well, Quinn Hughes likes playing with this guy. Quinn Hughes likes playing for this coach. So let's just get rid of all of them. And then they're going to be shocked when he walks in free agency in a couple of years. That being said, obviously, Zach Werenski is not quite as integral to the Blue Jackets as Quinn Hughes is to Vancouver. But you've got to think that they want to keep him happy, right? Especially if they want to make him the next captain. So I don't know that for me anyway, that would be, you choose Fabro, and then you get to the point of well, okay, if you keep Fabro, do you then go and get Aaron Ekblad to play with Denton Matejchuk, right? Or do you go for a more defensively minded guy? A lot of options. Well, not a lot of options. There's really only 2 options, but you could kind of move these pieces around in a lot of different ways. And I think it very much feels like if they keep Fabro, Ekblad's out of the picture, in the same way that I think if they keep Provorov, I don't think that Gavrikov is in the picture, because for some reason this organization seems to view Provorov as this big defensively minded guy. And he simply isn't that. He was better this year than he was last year, but I still don't think he's going to be worth whatever contract he's going to want to pay, to be paid. But this is not an episode about Provorov. That's probably tomorrow's episode, actually, I think we'll do Fabro versus Provorov, because I think that'll be fun. But is Aaron Ekblad worth the money that he is going to not conduct, but he is going to be asking for an amount of money? Is Aaron Ekblad worth that amount of money to the Blue Jackets specifically? Because again, they've got players to think about in, next summer, the summer after that, etc. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll talk about that when we get back here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We are talking about Aaron Ekblad, how he fits into this team. And I think we've kind of come to a conclusion. I say we because no one else is here. It's just me. I can use the royal we. Is that he does fit in a specific set of circumstances, right? I don't think it makes sense to have both Fabro and Ekblad. So then it becomes, okay, well, do you want to pay more for Ekblad and get slightly better results, or do you want to go for a cheaper option in Fabro that probably won't be as good as Ekblad, but will not dip into, in theory, the money that you want to save for guys down the road? So I guess it becomes, how much money do you want to pay for a guy like Aaron Ekblad, right? Blue Jackets have a lot of gaps in their roster, I think. Even just from a literal mad option, they have an active roster of 18 players currently. They have 11 forwards under contract. However, included in that is Jack Williams, who signed his ELC and played one game at the end of the season, and Luca Del Belbaluz, who's got 2 years left on his contract. But Jack Williams, I think, is probably going to be a monster next season. Luca Del Belbaluz, I think, has a real good chance to make this roster, but is not a full-time guy. So the Blue Jackets really have 9 NHL guys, 9 NHL forwards under contract. Dmitry Voronkov needs a new contract. He's the key guy that obviously needs signing. And then you've got, obviously, James Van Riemsdyk is a UFA. Sean Corrali, Christian Fischer, Kevin Labanc, Luke Cunnin, and Justin Danforth are all UFAs. I don't expect any of those to be back. Maybe James Van Riemsdyk. I would like to see James Van Riemsdyk return. I could see Justin Danforth maybe returning. And then Mikhail Pucha is an RFA. I assume he'll be back as well, but he's, again, going to be like a tweener guy. I don't think he registers in the NHL forward. So really, they need at least 3 forwards, probably more. They have 5 defensemen under contract right now: Werenski, Severson, Gabranson, Christensen, and Matejchuk. So again, I don't know what they're going to do there. Damon Severson, I think, is the obvious one that everyone wants to, chase out of town with pitchforks. But we'll see. Again, we'll see what happens there. But the Blue Jackets need at least 2 more defensemen. Again, they could bring a guy up, but they have holes in the roster, right? So do you give money to, and here's my point, is do you give money to Aaron Ekblad, because he's probably going to command a 7-year contract, right? Unless you do some kind of weird sign and trade, which I wouldn't recommend, just to get that 8th year. It's going to be 7 years for Ekblad. It's probably going to be at least $6 million. I would argue closer to 7. Or someone like Fabro, I think you could probably sign to a shorter, cheaper contract. I don't know what that contract would look like or could look like, but it's not going to be as long or as expensive as the Ekblad contract, right? So I think what you've got to look at is paying more for Ekblad worth losing Fabro potentially? I don't know that it is. Again, this is a question that I have kind of been going back and forth on, because I do like Ekblad a lot, and I do think he would be a good addition to this team. I'm not sure he's a player to add right now, especially when you already have a couple of contracts on the books that are kind of problematic, I would say. I'm not super worried about the cap, because again, the Blue Jackets have about $41 million in cap space, and that cap is going to keep going up. I am a little bit worried because, obviously, in next summer, Cole Sillinger needs a new contract. Adam Fantilli needs a new contract. The summer after that, Kent Johnson needs a new contract, and Kirill Marchenko also needs a new contract in the summer after that. So we're all the way in 2027 here, but it's things you got to think about. You've already got Werenski earning $9.5 million until 2028, which I'm fine with. Damon Severson is earning $6.25 until 2031. Granson comes off the books next season, but the season after that, Dante Fabbro is going to need a new contract. He's coming off his ELC. So, again, lots of moving parts you have to figure out. Elvis Merzlikins is coming off the books at 2027 if they don't get him off sooner, and so that's, $5 million that gets freed up. A lot of people worry about the Severson contract. I'm not super worried about the contract. My issue with Severson is him taking up a roster spot for someone else. Is kind of what I'm worried about right now. In terms of contracts, again, the Blue Jackets in a couple of years that might be an issue, but as of right now, I'm not super worried about the contract specifically. But do you really want to add another 7-year, $7 million contract when ostensibly Dante Fabbro's going to get paid? They've got other options of guys that you maybe want to bring in. None of their defensemen really kind of strike me as top 4 material. I know that they're really high on Charlie Alec. I know that Luca Morelli had a really good season. So those guys are potential. But if you're there paying, let's say, for example, I'll pull the situation back up. The 2027-28 season, you're going to be paying Zach Werenski $9.5 million. You're going to be paying Damon Severson $6.25. So that's what, 16 million already for 2 defensemen. Dante Fabbro could easily be making $7 or $8 million a season by then. Do you really want to lock in another defenseman then that's making $7 million? I've lost track of the math, but 15 plus 14 is that's almost $30 million on 4 guys. I don't know that it makes a ton of sense. If again, all of this is kind of but working on the basis that the Fabro contract, the Severson contract is still there, because I don't know that contract is movable. He's got a full no trade clause, so unless they Truba him, basically, I don't know what there is to do there, but that's kind of the issue for me. Is I think Aaron Ekblad is going to command a little bit too much money and a little bit too much term for me to ever really be super comfortable. If Ekblad wants to $7 million for the next 4 seasons or 5 seasons, sure, but he's at that exact age where he's going to want that 7, potentially 8-year contract to get up to his 36, 37-year-old season, and then ostensibly ride off into the sunset, right? Again, Ivan Provorov is I think a year older, but he's going to be looking for the same thing. He wants that contract that's going to take him up to 37 or 38-year-old season, and then he can disappear back off to Russia or whatever. So that's really what you've got to weigh in here. Is if you can sign him for less, I'm all for it. I am at this point in time hesitant to hand out long-term free agent contracts to guys of that age, just because I don't think that's necessarily what's best for the team. Don Waddell might disagree. Don Waddell is not the biggest fan of long-term contracts. He'll pay money for players that he thinks are worth it. I guess we've just got to see who he considers worth it and who he considers not worth it. I will say that the Olivier contract did surprise me. What was it, 6 years for $3 million or something? $3 million a year until 2031. I don't know that that's going to age super well, but again, that's not the point of this episode. Don Waddell likes paying money for players that he's familiar with. I don't know that he's going to be willing to hand out a 7 or 8 year contract to a guy like Aaron Ekblad. So we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. My overall thought on this, just to kind of wrap it up, is if you can't get Fabro, sure, Ekblad feels like a great replacement, but I personally would much rather have Dante Fabbro on the team than Aaron Ekblad. He's more of a proven factor on this team. Like Jordan Harris came super highly recommended. And again, I liked his game a lot. And he didn't fit into Dean Everson's systems at all. And that's why he struggled, right? And I wonder if it's a lot of money to spend on a risk like that. Obviously, it's got to be done. You can't just build a team out of nothing. But I don't know how well. Like, I think it'll be fine. Again, Ekblad and Fabro play very similar game. Fabro worked out great. Will Ekblad do the same? I'm not sure, but I feel mostly fine about it. Fine enough to, like, if Fabro's not an option, Ekblad is a fine option. But we'll see. I just don't know that I would give him, like, $7 million for the next 7 years. I don't know that I would do that. I'm not the GM of the Blue Jackets, though, so we'll see what Don Waddell does. That's kind of all I've got for today. Tomorrow, I think because I've been thinking about it, what we're going to do is we're going to look at it. You can only keep one of Fabro or Provorov. Which one do you pick? So we'll do that debate tomorrow. I'm sure everyone knows my answer, but maybe I'll talk myself out of it when I do a deep-ish dive for tomorrow's episode. Thank you for listening, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. You can find me at Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. And thank you once again for listening. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.